Alrighty, got it. Welcome back to Live with Jane and Jody. Today is Tuesday, March 25th. We have an incredible guest from Scottsdale, Arizona, is going to join us in a little bit. Real quick, I'm going to go over some basics. I am recording this session. I am Jane Boree, so I'll introduce myself in a moment, but I want to let everybody know we are recording this session. We do invite you to turn on your cameras, join us in the conversation. There will be a chat feature, so anytime you have questions, put them in the chat or unmute yourself, jump in at any point. We realize that Zoom can be a little awkward, but we want to include you in the conversation. These sessions are designed for you to engage with our alumni, bring your thoughts, your questions, anything we can answer as you prepare for this journey. A little bit about myself. I am one of the admissions representatives here at Sonoran University. I primarily help the candidates whose last names begin with the letters M through Z, working on your application, getting you ready for an interview, and ultimately just to that point of past that interview and hearing those words admit, I want to get you into this community and help you prepare for enrollment. Let's see, outside of Sonoran University, obviously I love Arizona. I've been here for 20 plus years. I don't miss the snow and the ice and the chill of the East Coast. The hiking, the mountains, everything here is incredible. I also love live entertainment. So any kind of sports or concerts or plays, things like that. That's a good time for me. All right, so enough about me. You might have noticed that Jody Durham is not here today. She is actually out traveling, adventuring across North Carolina today, all this week, as a matter of fact. She is visiting different graduate schools, going to different grad fairs, as a matter of fact, going to colleges and universities. So just spreading the word, trying to recruit more students and help you guys realize the path that's out here. All right, so enough about me. Let's see here. Let me tell you about our incredible guest. Wait. One quick thing Jody Durham usually does for us is the Sonoran University core value. She put a note here for us today to just quickly review. We do the right thing, right? We are principle driven, honoring commitments, accepting responsibility, and we follow the golden rule. So just a core value that we both really respect and we love to share with our community. All right, so enough about us. Let's talk about Dr. Wazny. Today, we have Dr. Philip Wazny, who is originally from Colorado. He did get his degree in sciences, molecular, cellular, developmental biology, and biochemistry from the University of Colorado at Boulder. Graduated in 1998 and then spent a few years in the Peace Corps in Honduras. So this will be interesting to hear about this adventure. Of course, after the Peace Corps, he came here to, at the time, Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine and graduated in 2006. So I did peek around a little on your website. I see you have a great practice right here in Scottsdale, Arizona. So we'll go into that in a little bit. And of course, his hobbies also include spending time with his lovely family and hiking as well. Excuse me, hiking as well. So we're absolutely excited to have you today, Dr. Wazny. Thank you for joining me. Thanks to our guests for being here as well. Anything else we can add to introduce you more thoroughly?
It's perfect, Jane. Well done. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here for you guys. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years since I started this journey, and I'm so excited for the majority of you to get onto this path. It's going to be exciting, difficult, amazing, fun, not so fun, all those various emotions you'll go through, but it's quite worth it, I can say, from a 20-year perspective. But I wish you all the very best of luck, of course.
20 years. Like, it didn't even really dawn on me until you just said it, but you're absolutely right. 2006 to 2026. So think back, take me back to that day in undergrad, or what was it that really, how did you become interested in naturopathic medicine?
A big part of it was being in Honduras for a couple years. So we were there for 2.5 years, and I worked in the health sector, they called it. And so obviously in a very poverty-stricken location, there wasn't a lot of resources, and so oftentimes we would venture out into the forests basically and harvest various botanical herbs for medicinal purposes. And I remember thinking, wow, this is amazing. The earth is giving us kind of all the resources we need, and there's why get pharmaceuticals sort of involved? Anyway, just sort of thinking about that at the time, and also health assisted, of course. So it was one of those, like, I think I really like this field, and so started the idea of, well, what else is out there? Because I was basically starting medical school in Colorado, a conventional medical school, but thought, gosh, I'm going to leave here with just one tool, which is a prescription pad, which is okay. That definitely has its place. But I thought, man, if we could get back into the Honduran forests and find those ways to help people without using pharmaceuticals, or as the old cliche goes, open up my toolbox so I've got more options available for my patients. And so the little caveat there is, when I was in the Peace Corps, I met another volunteer, and she was sent to the same village I was. Our town was kind of big enough it could hold 2 volunteers. And it turned out she was amazing and beautiful and intelligent and wonderful. And so we got married, actually, a couple of years after we got back, but she was from Arizona. And so it was this amazing sort of happenstance of, oh, what's in Arizona? There's an alternative medical school. This is perfect. Of course, then did my research, had my chance to sort of look at the school, of course, interview through the process, and it was like, perfect. Universe is looking out for me and sending me in the right direction. And it, of course, all the rest is history. So a really, really different kind of story, but certainly kind of seemed to be relatively seamless for me. It was great.
Perfect story. Truly. Like I actually want to step back a moment of how did you get inspired to do the Peace Corps in Honduras? And actually, I was inspired, instantly you said you were on track for allopathic school. And then something made you step away for a moment and keep expanding that. But I also love, like, true love just appeared out of the story. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's not quite what I expected going to Honduras. And growing up in Colorado, it's again almost cliched that you spend a lot of time camping and outdoors, and they don't let you into University of Colorado Boulder if you can't throw frisbee, and or maybe even hacky sack. But if you guys know what that is, so I'm aging myself. But this idea that I had never seen the world, never traveled. My folks weren't really interested in getting outside the United States. So I thought, well, what a better opportunity than to have the government pay for it for me and go live abroad. And they gave me, basically, we'll say, I don't remember exactly, but we'll say 21 options in the Peace Corps, and 20 of them were in Africa, and one was in Central America, in Honduras. And I thought, boy, it would be nice to come back with a language that is a little more applicable. Not to say the African dialects aren't helpful, but certainly living in Colorado, or again at this point now Arizona, it was pretty awesome to be able to speak Spanish and still get to use my Spanish quite a bit. And it took, everybody asked, how long did it take you to learn Spanish? Because I got there and I did some miming and trying to just be positive, but at the same time learning the language. So it took interesting. You start dreaming a little bit in this alternative language, the foreign language, and then eventually it becomes, okay, I want to say this. How do I translate it into Spanish? You just think in Spanish, or you just think in your other language. You don't really have to. How do I want to say it? It just naturally kind of comes out, but it takes longer than I was hoping. It was a long, frustrating 9 months, but like most things, if you practice and persevere, it ends up working out pretty well.
Yeah. But that's neat to hear how it transitions, like you dreamt about it, or you start actually thinking more in that other language. So that's neat. Thank you for sharing. How inspiring. What a great journey to be out in a different country, and then to start to, is that, so you really discovered naturopathic medicine. So the colleges, once you were back in Arizona, Did you even bother applying to all the other schools, or well, this one's here, you just applied here?
There you go. That's a good call, Jane. That was it. It was like, and as a matter of fact, my wife's name is Jane, so it's a wonderful name. I love it, of course. And so it was one of those. Yeah, I don't think I want to go to the Northwest. I don't want to go to the East up in Connecticut at the time. This just again, things really fell into place, and then of course when you go whether it's a school or someone's home or really anything, if you have an intuition, and I think we all do, and a lot of people kind of ignore that in a lot of ways. But I will say, in 20 years of practice, whew, it is a strong and really helpful asset that we all have. And so once I did my tour of the school, which of course looked very different than what it is now, even at the time, it was like, this is an amazing place. This is my place. And the conventional medical school in Denver was very allopathic and drab. And of course, you walk in the building and it almost felt depressing. Just the colors and the lighting and the type of patients that we're seeing there, and just kind of helping folks limp along rather than let's make a difference. Now, again, I don't mean to badmouth the allopathic world. They're good folks that really want to help people, and they do in sort of an acute setting very, very well. And I think there can be that collaboration between the two worlds, but in my point of view, I loved the idea of Sonoran Southwest at the time. It was just perfect for me and helping me reintegrate back into the United States and still being able to hold on to that experience in Honduras a little bit and kind of bridge them over just a bit.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we're not even close. Well, now let's kind of talk into the program, because immediately I start thinking, was Naturopath Without Borders, did that exist quite then? Or did the Hustlers come after you graduated, I think, right?
It did.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Ah,
And Tabitha, I think, shoot, I forget her last name. She started it back, I think it was close to when I was done with school. And I've heard it's just continues to grow, which is really, really helpful.
yeah, yeah. I'm wondering, yeah, did you ever, you could probably still, they would love for you to join them on their monthly trips, like,
I know.
yeah.
I did, and actually, I did sort of set up my own externship in my third year of school with National College in Portland. They were going to Peru and were looking for students basically to help with intake, and if they spoke Spanish, it was kind of a bonus. And so I thought, okay, I'll go. So it was a month-long trip that we were in Peru. So basically 4 different cities. I had one day for Machu Picchu, of course, which everybody should do when they're in Peru, and
Yeah.
then saw amazing cases, as you can imagine, including a case of leprosy, which was quite, you see that stuff in textbooks and never think you'll see it in real life. And and at the same time, again, very poverty-stricken places where it takes a lot of ingenuity and creativity rather than just reaching for those pills and just dumping those off on your patients, and just trying to use that personalized approach for patients and what fits them based on where they are, who they are, what kind of goals you're trying to accomplish. And so, any case, Wayne Centrone was a physician out of National College, and he was an amazing mentor at that time. And so, made sense. So the idea of, again, not going to another school, but again, there is that collaboration that can happen in inter
Oh,
schools, and
yeah.
we're all kind of going for the same
Yeah.
thing, right? In terms of trying to help our patients in a natural way.
Yeah, I definitely I see that collaboration for sure, and on many levels. And what a great tip, though, that you kind of threw out there by exploring. So you did that externship while you were at Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. So that's wonderful to realize what else you could be exposed to before you're actually even have graduated, just by experiencing different schools, partnerships, countries, things like that,
And
not
I
just
give
what's
this,
available on your own campus.
you got it. I give the school a lot of credit because, of course, I had to petition the clinical director at the time and say, this is what I'm gonna thinking of doing. Is this possible? Uh, I think because I would miss a little bit of school didactic stuff. And she was, of course, this sounds like an amazing experience that they, it sounds like they'd be lucky to have you. Kind of, I mean, she was very flattering. And so, again, to sort of have that flexibility, I think a lot of schools would just follow the rules, stay in your lane, don't try to shake this thing up at all. And to me, it was great to have, a different experience that sort of jived with what my experience was in the Peace Corps.
Mhm. Helped shape your education and it connected back to what was your roots. Neat. All right, I'm gonna go slow. Your internet's getting choppy on me again. So let's go through the program itself. You had a good sciences foundation. You were on your way to medical school. Was naturopathic medical school as difficult as you thought it would be, or just as rigorous? What do you recall in the education that you received here, preparing you for the boards ultimately, right?
Yeah, that's a good call. And as a matter of fact, I often used USMLE study guides. There's various steps through a conventional medical school, and the questions were actually quite similar, and found the didactic work to be very similar in that way. And it was challenging. It definitely was, and it should be. I mean, we're going to help people and have their lives sort of in our hands, and so we need to be well trained to be able to help folks. So, again, and not at the same time doing the same schooling, but from what I know from my MD and DO friends, they are very, very similar. So it's quite a ride and quite a challenge in that way. So buckle up, everybody, but it's totally worth it. It definitely helps you in those next phases where, of course, you're in the clinical setting.
Mm. Yeah. And the clinical setting, again, it might look a little bit different today. Our campus has expanded. We have two clinics now right on campus where, again, when you were in school, the clinic was over in another part of Scottsdale. You even had to drive to the clinic. So we have
That's
evolved
right.
quite a bit for sure. But do you feel then at the end, were you well prepared? Oh, I apologize. Did you do residency when you graduated?
I did sort of the same thing like Peru. I sort of set up my own externship. So as you're rotating through various clinics in your sort of final years, I really made a good connection with an MD named Cleve Bethel, who's actually was associated with the school, and he liked the idea of thinking, well, patients, what's the number one reason people go into the clinic? Pain. It's a big one. So if I can offer other options for pain management besides, of course, opioid, if we can help stimulate the body's own healing response. And so he was doing prolotherapy, PRP, along with sort of conventional fluoroscopically guided injections. So it was a year and a half sort of externship way to sort of see how a clinic is run. Actually shadowed him at the hospital quite a bit over at Banner Baywood, so spent a fair amount of time there, sort of seeing how that side works. I'm really glad I don't work in a hospital. That's definitely not my cup of tea, and God bless all the folks who do work in hospitals. But after that year and a half or so, felt okay. I've got some good clinical training here. Got the idea of how an office kind of run. All right, let's hopefully it'll work out. And of course, it has.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So with your training through SENM at the time, and what a great opportunity to be directly under Dr. Bethel, absolutely, for that time. So not truly a residency, but he kind of took you in under his wing where he was still covering overhead and things like that. So and what you got to shadow every moment of it. How lucky. That's outstanding. So and here again, I think one of the tips that you put out there is during your education while you're in the program experiencing different clinics to find the right fit or to find that next connection as a bridge before again you're just forced out there on your own. So really good feedback and understanding of how you made that happen successfully, right? Being able to observe how he was running the business and all, and knowing hospital wasn't your setting, seeing that too. So,
Yeah,
is there
that's
anything you would
and I
say?
think that's
Oh, go ahead.
part of the.
Mhm. The
I'm
internet.
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about the delay. I'm I'm not sure if it's my internet too, but I think the idea of having different exposures and different types of clinics is very helpful. And unfortunately, at least at the time for me, it required a fair amount of my own sort of work. I really give the school a lot of credit that they kind of gave us this framework to work from, and it definitely gave us some exposure. But again, at the end of the 4 years, I thought, okay, this has been wonderful, but I need to branch out a little bit more. And and so my piece of advice there too is following the curriculum with the school is amazing and will definitely get you well prepared and well trained for the real world. But also, don't be afraid to sort of branch out from that if you need to. It's there's so much opportunity, there's so much need for medical care in general, and patients and the public are looking for alternative and naturopathic options. I can't believe in 20 years how much this has grown, how beautiful the school is, the type of intervention that we can have in the community has been amazing. So the, the opportunity, this is your chance to really sort of buckle up and, like I said, hang on, but also kind of hone your skills so that you can then get out into the world and make a big difference for your community.
Well said. Well said. Internet's a little choppy, but I'm pretty clear on what you're sharing here. There's a great question in the
Thank
chat,
you.
as a matter of fact. Did you feel prepared for boards after school? Or did you have a lot of extra studying? Did you have to do a lot of extra studying outside of school?
Good question. The short answer is no. I felt very prepared. I did not need to do a whole lot extra. I think it also depends on your learning style. And so for me, there were some folks in our class, of course, and if they weren't so nice, you'd hate them because they would read something once or see something once and then they'd have it. And you think, well, that's just not fair. And for me, I would have to read something over and over and over again, and probably upwards of 10 times. And then it finally would sort of sink in. So I definitely did, of course, a lot of studying outside of school to get prepared for boards, but felt all of the preparation and definitely did fine on those.
Lots of review, lots of preview, over and over. Yes. All right, let's keep going down our list here. What do you think was the most challenging? Like that, I think, yeah. Did you feel prepared for boards was a great question. What was the most challenging while you were within the curriculum or in the program itself? Do you remember?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that there were certain times when various professors and their teaching style didn't quite resonate with the way I learned. And I think that's going to be the case wherever you go to school. I don't think you can avoid that. Everybody just learns differently. And so in those cases, those were challenging. Just didn't quite understand the way the information was being taught to us. And so in those cases, this is where you're going to be close friends with the rest of your classmates. You spend a lot of time sort of outside of the classroom trying to learn the material and getting to truly understand it. And then if you again can kind of teach other people how you understand it, then of course now you got it. Then it really is in there if you can of course show someone else. So it wasn't any particular class in general. I think there were some general highs and lows, but overall it did teach me how to learn a little bit differently in certain settings. But overall, I again felt very prepared for boards for sure.
Mhm. Got it. But again, you give some really unique advice that I haven't heard before. Like that could be challenging. It's just being flexible with different teaching styles. You know, you knew your learning style, so being flexible and understanding, learning the professors, connecting with your classmates. And then you even went into tutoring, becoming a tutor and just repeating, really going to make sure you're ready for those boards. Good advice. Did you have any life outside of school?
Yes, good question. Life outside of school. So again, had met at the time was my girlfriend from the Peace Corps, Jane, and we didn't get married until a couple years into the program. So basically dated. We were sort of, I wonder if this is going to work in the United States. We've only really known each other here in Honduras, and it's so different, of course. And it ended up being much easier here in the United States. You can drive your own car, you can drink water from the faucet, their showers are accessible. There's a big difference. So it ended up being quite an easy conversion or transition. And so she was very understanding in terms of how rigorous the program was, and understood that was my passion. And I think was very supportive in that way, knowing that this is something that makes him real happy, but also stimulates a part of his mind and his basically soul. And that I really like to connect with people and ultimately try to help people when they're not feeling great. And so there was definitely some sacrifices that you make. And I think that's just par for the course. It's just one of those things they call delayed gratification. You sort of put little things off now, and then eventually it gives you the opportunity to maybe enjoy that then. And so I can clearly say that it's all sort of played out in that way where I am able to sort of make up for lost time in a way. But it is possible to have a life outside of school. It'll just be, if you want to do a good job in school, you might be a little limited at your time away from studying the material.
A small window, just a small little window. It's okay. Now, I'm guessing
Exactly.
then
Instead of
that
sleeping, you can
that instead of sleeping, what?
instead of sleeping, you can hang out with your friends or your loved ones, and that's your chance. That's your chance to actually have a life outside. So I'm actually tongue in cheek kidding there, but it is important, of course, to get good sleep.
Definitely got to have the sleep balance. So I don't want to get too far off. Let's stay focused here. I was going to ask. I guess Miss Jane is not a naturopathic doctor, but so she didn't complete the program with you.
No, that's a good question. No, she did not. She ended up getting her MBA. And when she was in the Peace Corps, she worked in entrepreneurship and sort of small business settings in that sector. And so, as it turns out, in private practice now, she's the one who runs the practice. So I say she does the hard stuff with the numbers and the books and all of those things. And I get the fun part where I get to see patients and just kind of do the medicine thing, and then sort of hand all that other hard stuff off to someone who really knows what they're doing. And she has done an amazing job in her, again, 20 years of practice here.
That is a great partnership. Lucky for you to have someone to run the office and the administrative side of it. So let's transition. I think this is a great transition into your practice, right? Let's talk a little bit about that because you mentioned you've learned a lot under Dr. Bethel. I'm wondering how much has that influenced your practice? Tell us a little bit. So are you there Monday through Friday, 9 to 5? What's your schedule like? What's the day in the life?
Yeah, good question. So it's one of those things too that and I forget the actual statistic, but most people when they go into private practice don't start a clinic and then just stay there for their entire career. And that was the case for me too. Sort of working with other providers, I worked with a conventional MD in internal medicine and also an addictionologist. So we were helping folks who unfortunately were dealing with addiction through their detoxification, using a lot of IV therapy, acupuncture, homeopathy. at the same time while he was doing his sort of conventional approach. So that was amazing. We were seeing 30 to 40 patients a day. That was challenging. While at the same time partnering up with other naturopaths. And one of the first classes, one of the students in the first class was Alan Christensen. So ended up working with him for about 5 years. And he was a few years ahead of me, of course. And so it was great to have someone there who, again, not only is a genius when it comes to medicine, but it also that you can sort of emulate people that you really obviously respect, but also learn from your experience. It was a perfect, again, a perfect opportunity in so many ways. But then after a while, you sort of get to this point where you think, well, I've got this amazing wife who's brilliant when it comes to business. Maybe we could do this on our own, and we can try to branch out and start our own practice. And so that was about 13 years ago, 14 years ago, I think, for our own practice. And so been in Scottsdale ever since. And changed the model a little bit here and there. I know we can get into that in just a second, but it's the beautiful thing of working for yourself is that you have lots of that flexibility. And the joke is you can pick your hours, to get back to your question, you can pick your hours as you work for yourself. Just pick any 80 hours a week you want, and then you can just work those. It worked out great. So I think at first that's kind of how you start. You just put in lots of effort, lots of time, and just get the thing up and off the ground. And after about 10 years or so, we got up to about 3,500 patients or so. And I would see about 2,000 people a year. And at that point, that's when COVID sort of started to be a problem. And I was treating COVID patients. So I was working basically all the time on the phone with people, trying to help folks through it. And that actually included oxygen. We were getting folks supplemental oxygen. And then when the medical supply stores ran out of oxygen tanks, we would petition welders. They're apparently in welding, you use a lot of, I guess, oxygen as well. So we would get tanks from welders around town. And as long as we had, non-rebreathers or cannulas, and that worked out great. So there was a point where it became obviously too much. And so, as I said, the practice has sort of changed now where I've got a much smaller group of patients. And so now I work basically from 8 to 5 every day of the week except Wednesdays, today's, where I have no patient care other than if things come up sort of last minute, so to speak. But for now, it gives me a chance to do these kind of things and work from home if I need to. And definitely it's enough. I definitely have enough clinic time to be able to see folks, and enough time outside. It's kind of in the middle of the week, it breaks it up. So you're reinvigorated and excited to go back into the clinic on Thursday and Friday.
Mm-hmm. Neat. Boy, you did some great name dropping in there. Again, some really incredible influences and mentors. Oh, how fun. I didn't even think to ask, like, well, of course you started your own practice right off. No, it still takes a couple stepping stones out there. So thank you for sharing and making sure that we kind of see that path and understand the process, because that is quite a leap. So again, finding those mentors, those influences, having those connections, really great stuff. Dr. Christian, like just some of the names you mentioned, I'm like, gosh, I love all these people. That's so fun. And lucky for you. So now you have the partnership, you've got your practice up and running. I laughed immediately. You're like, yeah, just 80 hours a week, no problem. Did you really hold it that high pace for 10 years? Or when did you realize, okay, we can't sustain this? Like, okay, how do you go from big
Yeah, it's a
scale
good
and tell your
question.
patients we've got to get smaller?
Yeah, I think it wasn't really 80 hours per se, but it certainly was a lot of coming in early, staying late, working through lunch. Again, to build that book of patience. And if nothing else, it's funny, and I completely agree that the golden rule still applies. It's funny, we were just talking to our kids about this last night, how important that golden rule is. And patients, of course, if you just think of yourself in your patient's shoes, and apply how you would want to be treated, that unfortunately, at least at first, takes a lot of time. And that's time of figuring out your practice style. Of course, how are you going to treat various conditions? And obviously, as time goes on, you've practiced more, you get better and better. Like anything, if you practice, you tend to get better. And so I think ultimately it got to the point, and COVID was the straw that broke the camel's back, because it did sort of last all day, 7 days a week, and calling patients and being afraid at the time, like, are we really going to help these folks? And so I'm proud to say we had a little over 300 patients that we treated almost exclusively through Zoom and even just on the phone, and we didn't lose one. So it was naturopathic medicine really shined for me and made a huge difference for those patients. And so if I wasn't a believer at that point, now I really am, especially after something like COVID.
Right. Oh, amazing. How incredible. So now you've got a good scale practice. I love what you said about Wednesdays. It worked out for me last year at the end of the year. I had so much vacation times banked up that I was going to lose it. I took a lot of Wednesdays off. That was the perfect break of the week. I love that you have Wednesdays off. Then now do you see everybody from pediatrics through to geriatrics? Do you use a lot of those injection therapies you mentioned? Like, tell us a little bit about what kind of practice you have today.
Yeah, good question. I do. I see newborns. I've been seeing little kids and newborns really sort of since the beginning. And I think, and that was sort of a function of the training at the time, that there was a lot of folks that didn't feel comfortable being around kids. But I joke with a lot of my parents and say, you know what, once you become a parent, you're basically a glorified pediatrician, because
Mhm.
you're looking out for your kid and trying to figure out what may be wrong with him or her. But at the same time, then the parents see your style and go, oh, this guy seems pretty normal and rational about how he treats things. Maybe he would see me too. And so sort of expanded the practice then to those parents and their parents. And so I have multi-generational families in the practice, which is wonderful. Of course, once you really know a lot of the family members, you can truly understand lifestyle and how you can maybe intervene and truly make a difference for people. So and now the prolotherapy or PRP injections, again, has gotten very, very popular. Lots of folks in town doing it. So I do some of it, basically for my patients who maybe have an acute issue. But to have Dr. David Tallman in school or in town, he's that kind of work, and I refer basically all my patients to him for orthopedic issues that require either prolotherapy or PRP. He's amazing when it comes to that kind of thing.
Mhm. Love that you'll always have the networks and referrals. So you obviously though still do you do manipulation and acupuncture? Do you use homeopathy? Like what's your favorite modality?
Yeah, I do a fair amount of acupuncture, and I think the biggest modality is actually prevention, which isn't very sexy or very, very interesting, but it does have a huge impact in people's lives. And whether that's from uh, a health perspective or even a mood perspective and a spirit perspective, it's much more impactful than I think people give a lot of credit to. So, uh, and as it turns out, I also have a chiropractor in my office who I've known for 15 years, and she's wonderful. And so for manipulation, a little bit, I'm good at certain things. And so when it's something outside of that, send your patients to someone. Again, back to the golden rule. I want to see the best person who can do manipulation. If I was in this situation, um, Dr. Mancuso is great for that. So let's see her. And of course, being in the same office, it works out perfectly. And they'll go see her and then come back to me for other healthcare issues.
Wow. What a great, yeah, a good partnership. I forgot that I'd seen that on the website as well, that you had a chiropractor in there as well. That's excellent. And I believe she was RD, registered dietitian, obviously clinical nutrition. We are what we eat. It just really smart, smart. How much time do you spend with your patients? You kind of mentioned a family practice. I'm familiar with Dr. Bishop. I think she kind of really kicked off that subscription model. Is that how your practice operates, or what's your model? Like, you take insurance? I always ask random questions.
Yeah, good questions all around, Jane. Boy, you're good at this interview stuff. Well done. The practice itself is converted, as I said, to sort of a newer model with what we're calling direct primary care, or concierge is another name for it. But in other words, basically a membership process. And so patients have more access to whether it's office visits or outside of office care. And that can be phone calls, that can be texts, that can be FaceTime or Zoom like this. And so we don't take insurance in that way. Although for a lot of labs or medications or even supplements, folks will use their health savings accounts, HSAs. And so if the entity we're working with have their own billing department, then that gets run through insurance. So a lot of folks really appreciate that, particularly for labs, which can be quite expensive. And so for the office visits, or basically for my time, it's out of pocket, cash fee for service. And so the new patient visits, which actually I'm not taking any new patients at this point because we're full with our model, but new patient visits are usually an hour to an hour and a half. And then our follow-up visits can range anywhere from a half an hour to a full hour. And my staff has been well trained to sort of ask patients when they want to come in, like, how much time do you need, and what kind of issues do we need to get into? And not details per se, but just how long do you need to spend time with Waz? And so it sort of depends, of course, on the patient. And some folks, of course, just great just to sort of chit chat a little bit sometimes too. And I consider a lot of my patients my friends at this point too.
It really, yeah, it's always a great connection. Like, that's your naturopathic doctors are just so friendly and always genuine. Like, I love it. You're so kind. Oh, people are lucky to have you. So you talk a little bit about the model, right? You've gone from big to this to that. Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You just want to maintain this, or do you see growing, bringing in another partner, bringing on a resident from Sonoran University? It's a graduate or about to graduate. What do you see coming up next?
I love that little plug in there. That's that's awesome. You're awesome. It's yeah, I think the sky's the limit. And I ultimately I do some volunteering in the Latino community, and I would love to get back to that a little bit more. And being able, I do have patients who exclusively just speak Spanish, so I'll obviously get to continue using my Spanish. But the culture and the richness and um, just the difference in the type of patients has been quite, for me, was very, very rewarding. And so ultimately, I would love to get back to something like that. And so does that mean, and it's challenging because there's that old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, as we are quite successful in what we're doing right now. And why rock the boat if everything's going okay? Maybe I take that day off on Wednesday and do something different in that way. But I truly could see myself in 5 years doing the same thing and still being happy about it. We definitely do make a difference for folks. And I feel like this type of model gives me the flexibility to even go to patients' homes if I need to, or visit them if they unfortunately do end up in a hospital setting for whatever reason. So it is how I had in mind the way I wanted to practice medicine. That sort of old school, little town doctor that really gets to know their patients and is able to spend that time with people that they typically don't get in a conventional model. And again, it's not that the conventional model is uh, intuitively or intentionally bad. It's just the system set up a little funny. And so the providers in it are wonderful people trying to make a difference in just a sort of broken system. So again, when you work in your own clinic, you get that flexibility and you can set it up really however you want it.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that you just remain true to, like you said, that small town family feeling, and having all of your patients are actually your friends, caring about them that much that it's not about growth and having a bigger practice, but caring about my patients on that individual level constantly. So thank you for doing that. Just wonderful. We need more and more and more doctors, naturopathic doctors like this. Like, yeah, just we're so blessed. So thank you for doing that. Oh, there's a question. Even though naturopathy emphasizes natural treatments, are there times when you prescribe pharmaceutical meds? Thank you, Kia.
Good question. Yes, so it definitely is appropriate. And what I've often found over the years is when you combine the two modalities, so to speak. So, in other words, oftentimes if you're using, we'll say, lipid lowering agents, so you've got your bergamot, maybe a little red yeast rice, so in other words, sort of the natural supplement side of things, then if you do need medications, uh, typically not statins, for example, but you can use a lower dose of what you would normally use in the pharmaceutical setting. And so and same comes to antidepressants, same comes to antibiotics, same comes with antivirals, for example. So, and I thought about this early in school, and I think this is what sets us apart in that most patients, I think of it like a bell curve. Most people, of course, on a bell curve are in the middle, and those folks love the idea of natural medicine. And if we can take care of my issue with natural medicine, awesome. But boy, if I do need a little bit of help from the pharmaceutical world, I love that too. And so my practice sort of just lives right in the middle there. That's where most folks feel comfortable. And if you are also able to blend them, then it becomes this even more powerful synergistic relationship that patients are really excited about. And it it isn't one way or the other's better. It's based on what's going on for that patient at the time. And sometimes that means a medication, and sometimes that means just over the counter things and simple modalities. And sometimes it's a little bit of both.
Mhm. Good question. Thank you for explaining. Absolutely, the balance in one way or another, for sure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, definitely please offer your questions in the chat. We have about 12 minutes left here. Let me see, what did I skip over in my list of questions? We talked about the path. I thought of something earlier. I mean, what words of advice for the folks that you have here? As I look down the list of the names that are on the call, I see folks that are admitted to the program that are literally starting it next week. You heard me talk about, we are starting a class, literally new student orientation. I see some that are still just barely starting to work on their application. So all across the board here, some that are admitted to fall 26, so that are starting later on this year. So a little bit of variety. What words of advice do you have for these folks at this point in their journey?
Great question. And I think, of course, everybody's journey is a little bit different, and so it's difficult to give direct advice. But I understand the question. It's a good one to sort of springboard off of, and that if there's for any of the parents that are out there, there's always this idea that kids grow up so fast. Make sure you enjoy those younger years when they're 1, 2, and 3, and or enjoy your years when you're in medical school. It goes so fast, and you'll want to go back to it. And that's all total BS, at least in my experience, because it's not easy. It's not fun. Kids can be difficult, and medical school is difficult. And not to say I don't miss it. There are definitely some really wonderful things about it, but it's also a very challenging time. So I think if you prepare yourself mentally that it's a challenging time, but that it's worth it. And your work now, as I spoke about, sort of that delayed gratification, your hard work now will pay off when you do go out into the real world and start seeing your patients, again, wherever that may be. And then I think the other piece of advice I sort of alluded to before is to just not be afraid to branch out a little more. If there's something you're really interested in and that the program doesn't have a big focus on, or is just very superficial, we'll say, don't be afraid to reach out to doctors. And whether that's on the naturopathic side or the MD side, you'll be amazed at how many doctors, and if you think about it, they just want to help. And I've been cold called a number of times from students on both sides saying, we hear what you're doing. We would love to can I come watch? Can I come see what you're doing? Can I shadow you for a day? We've had some people say, can I come shadow you for a month? It's like, oh boy, that's a long time. But to have that influence on people and to be able to show them some things that you've figured out in hopes that they don't make similar mistakes or similar problems as they're going along. So again, to bring it back home, is to not be afraid to try and branch out if you need to. And I know it can be difficult to sort of make those calls or emails and out of nowhere just sort of ask those questions. Would you mind if I asked you a question? Would you mind if I came watched what you do? But you'll be amazed how many docs are like, of course, yeah, I love to teach, I love to help. Of course, that's what doctor comes from, right? Docere, which is the Latin form of teacher. We're all teachers in this community.
Well said. That's my favorite. And I say it all the time because I love when I connect with someone and they're a tutor or they are helping in some way in that matter. I recommend it all the time. Once you are here and you master that subject, make sure you're a tutor over there in the Dulce across from the library. Have you been to the campus? When's the last time you actually came over and toured the Lim Commons or anything?
Yeah, it's let's see, I was there a couple months ago actually for another event, and it's just unbelievably beautiful, and they did such an amazing job not only with building materials and the design, but again, and it's kind of a little woo-woo, but I could say that the energy in the place is just so welcoming and warm and healing, which is, of course, what you kind of want when it comes to a medical school. I've been to so many other medical schools and have spoke to a lot of other doctors, and you don't always get that same feeling. So I'm proud to say I'm a naturopathic physician. I'm proud to say I'm a graduate of Sonora University since the name change, and it feels. I feel honored to help my patients in the way that I can, and the training I received was quite supportive for that. And if nothing else, if you feel like you're making a small difference in your community, it kind of goes back to the Honduras story. You join the Peace Corps thinking, I'm going to save the world and make a huge difference. And then you get there and go, oh boy, this is tough. There's a lot of obstacles in the way. Okay, well, maybe I can just help this country. Okay, well, wow, country's big. Okay, maybe I can help this small town that I'm living in. Okay, never mind. Maybe I can help this one family that I get to know. Okay, one kid in this family. So it's the same idea that I may not be changing medicine around the world, but you do make a huge impact in your own community. And it's amazing to be out and about and bumping into your patients. And again, doing this long enough, you make wonderful connections with different folks. So I think it's one of those chances that, again, you can do whatever you want when it comes to medicine, which of course I think is real challenging in a conventional medical training. You're sort of stuck with the insurance companies or hospital settings, and so I loved the idea of having that flexibility, and of course it ended up working out great.
So inspiring. We're all so blessed to be together. I think like we're very like-minded and contributing in some way or another on different levels. We have another chat from Peter here. He says, I have been introduced to natural plant-based anti-inflammatory injections for pain control. My question, does the program incorporate similar avenues in training for pain management? Are you familiar with the current curriculum?
Good question. Yeah, I am not, unfortunately. So actually, I'm probably not the best qualified to answer the question. I don't really know our practice as well. So, Peter, maybe when you get far enough along in the program, we would love to have you come by and see what we're doing.
What I'm going to do too, Peter, is I'm going to jot down your question and reach out to our doctors in the Neil Reardon Center and our doctors in the medical center and ask that question for you from our current professors. And hopefully we have your email address on record. I'll definitely follow up with you after the call. Yeah, you bet. Thank you for the question. Peter Fernino. If you want, you could private message me your email address. Maybe you already did. Thank you. All right. Dr. Wazny, it truly has been my pleasure, my honor. I'm so grateful that you spent this hour with me today. Like your questions, your information, you're so genuine and just it's beautiful to have you in my life. Thank you for sharing with us today. We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Next conversation that we're gonna have, do you know Dr. Melissa Coates? I don't know when she graduated off the top of my head. Do you know Dr. Melissa Coates?
Oh, sure. She's wonderful. She was in the class right before, or I guess it would be after ours. I think she graduated in 07. So she is definitely someone you want to hear from. Is really figured out her. They're very good in the oncology world. So and just to wrap things up here too, Jane, it's been wonderful, and I can't believe how fast the hour went, and it's been an honor for me as well to be able to spend some of my knowledge and out there too. That as I said, we're always happy to take students, and if everyone's interested as they get further along into the program and just want to come shadow a little bit or just sort of see how practices run, please, as I said, don't be afraid to reach out, and we would be honored and welcomed to have you into the office.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We will keep that in mind and encourage folks to reach out for shadowing hours or interviewing or whatever it could be. Perfect. Yes. Thank you, Kia. Thank you guys for the questions. So we are going to be doing this similar conversation with Dr. Melissa Coates on Wednesday, April 15th. So next month, April 15th, similar setting. Join us on Zoom for your lunch break from 12 to 1 Arizona time. Thank you, Dr. Wazny. Bye, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Pleasure, guys. Good luck. We'll talk to you soon.
This guy's emailing.